Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manoabhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guruho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsa Shri Rupam Sagrata Sahagana Raghunathānvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Shadhanvitamsa Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauravite Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanta Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhano Sute Pranamami Hare Krishna Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyadevata Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. जय श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा महारानी की जय, श्री सुदर्शन देव की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. Hare Krishna. So, welcome all the Vaishnavas today for today's discussion on the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse number 29. So, I'd like to seek the blessings of all the assembled devotees and especially His Grace Devaki Nandan Prabhu for kindly empower me and bless me so that whatever I speak is in line with the Guru Parampara and for the glorification of the Supreme Lord and for our own purification. Hare Krishna. So, Prabhu, is the verse on 6.29? Okay, thank you. So, we have been discussing from chapter 6 for the last several weeks, and maybe it's worthwhile just going through a brief summary of chapter 6 before we go on to today's verse. But yes, first let's read the translation, the verse itself and the translation and purport before we do that. So, Sarva Bhutastam Atmanam Sarva Bhutani Chatmani Ikshate Yoga Yuktatma Sarvatra Samadarshanaha Sarva Bhutastam Atmanam Sarva Bhutani Chatmani Ikshate Yoga Yuktatma Sarvatra Samadarshanaha Sarva Bhutastam Atmanam Sarva Bhutani Chatmani Ikshate Yoga Yuktatma Sarvatra Samadarshanaha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. Purport. A Krishna-conscious yogi is the perfect seer because he sees Krishna, the Supreme, situated in everyone's heart as the super soul, Paramatma. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe Arjuna tishtati. The Lord in his Paramatma feature is situated within both the heart of the dog and that of a Brahmana. The perfect yogi knows that the Lord is eternally transcendental and is not materially affected by his presence in either a dog or a Brahmana. That is the supreme neutrality of the Lord. The individual soul is also situated in the individual heart, but he is not present in all hearts. That is the distinction between the individual soul and the super soul. One who is not factually in the practice of yoga cannot see so clearly. A Krishna conscious person can see Krishna in the heart of both the believer and the non believer. In the Smriti, this is confirmed as follows: Adatattvakcha martvakcha atma hi paramo harihi. The Lord, being the source of all beings, is like the mother and the maintainer. As the mother is neutral to all different kinds of children, the Supreme Father or Mother is also. Consequently, the super soul is always in every living being. Outwardly also, every living being is situated in the energy of the Lord. As will be explained in the 7th chapter, the Lord has primarily two energies, the spiritual or the superior and the material or the inferior. The living entity, although part of the superior energy, is conditioned by the inferior energy. The living entity is always in the Lord's energy. Every living entity is situated in him in one way or another. The yogi sees equally because he sees that all living entities, although in different situations according to the results of fruitive work, in all circumstances remain the servants of God. While in the material energy, the living entity serves the material senses, and while in the spiritual energy, he serves the Supreme Lord directly. In either case, the living entity is the servant of God. This vision of equality is perfect in a person in Krishna consciousness. Once again, I'll read the translation. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. So, this particular verse is you can think of it as like the semi-final verse in a series of verses in which Krishna is progressively taking the practitioner along the path of yoga and how one progresses from one step to another step. So if you look at the 6th chapter, it is entitled as Dhyana Yoga. So earlier in 5th chapter, towards the ending, there was a description of Ashtanga Yoga. Of course, 5.29 itself ended with the description of Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Dehinam Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati. So that was a description of how the Supreme, by understanding the Lord to be the Bhokta and the Maheshwara and also the Suhridam. So by understanding these three, by understanding the Lord to be all of these, one can attain real peace. So there was the hint of Bhakti Yoga given in the last verse of chapter 5. And then chapter 6, initially in the first 9 verses, that is from verse number 1 to 9, Lord Krishna is giving us the process of how one actually climbs the ladder of this Ashtanga Yoga. So step by step, the Lord is, explaining this process. And then from verses 10 to 15, the Lord is talking about Brahman realization. So now it is like, now that you have got onto the ladder. So in Sanskrit, the word is Arudha. So Arudha means to get onto something. Just like Lord Vishnu is known as Garuda Rudha. Garuda Rudha means one who is on the back of Garuda. Similarly, there is a verse in the Bhagavatam which says that Griheshu Khagavat Saktas Tam Arudachyutam Viduhu. So once one is seated on the human form or the human body, one should not misuse it by becoming excessively attached to the material conception. So this word Arudha is a very interesting word. So that's what is happening in the first 9 verses. Lord is seating the sadhaka first, telling him how to establish himself on the path of dhyana yoga. And then from verse 10 to 15, he starts speaking about the different aspects of realization. First, the Brahman realization. Then 16 to 23 is the Paramatma realization. 24 to 32, that is the verse which we are reading today, verse number 29, is the Bhagavan realization. So in this way, the Lord is gradually taking the practitioner all the way up to Bhagavan realization, where if you read 24 to 32, towards the culmination, like 6.30, the famous verse comes, Yomam pashyati sarvatra, sarvam cha mai pashyati. So there the Lord is clearly saying that it is me who you have to see everywhere and see everything in me. Me meaning me, the personality of Godhead. Whereas in today's verse, if you see 29, the word mam is not used, right? So in 29, it's just Krishna is a bit at this point a little more vague because he is yet to come to the final point. So he's saying, if you see here, of course, Prabhupada is very merciful. So he, in the translation, whatever is in the future, Krishna is going to say, already Prabhupada tells us right in 6.29 itself. So Prabhupada translates as Yogi observes me. But if you look at the Sarva Bhutastam Atmanam Sarva Bhutani Chatmani, right? So that if you see, there is no mam over there. Me is in Sanskrit mam. But that mam is only coming in 6.30, right? Yomam pashyati sarvatra. So Prabhupada is very kind, he has, because he knows that we are extremely fallen souls in Kali Yuga. So he gives us the essence right in the beginning. So once I think somebody asked Prabhupada that, I think it was a Mayavadi sannyasi, and he came and said, Swamiji, you are inserting Krishna in the translation when there is no Krishna in the Sanskrit, word to word. Why is that? Because they have a problem if they want that exact word to word translation. Prabhupada said, because you remove Krishna when Krishna is mentioned, so I insert Krishna where he is not mentioned also, just to do justice. So Prabhupada had that determination to glorify the Supreme Lord, and it was so intense that, it was overflowing, right from the beginning, Prabhupada is giving us the conclusion already. So in this way, so Prabhupada is, Krishna is bringing Arjuna or the practitioner slowly to the point of understanding that you have to see, one who sees me in everything and sees everything in me, he is never lost to me, nor am I ever lost to him. And then after this, the next section, after 32 onwards, if you see, that is the time when Arjuna starts, 33 actually, Arjuna starts asking that, the mind is so difficult to control. So that whole 33 to 37 is about control of the mind, or rather how difficult it is to control the mind. And then after that, 37 onwards, the discussion moves on to what happens to an unsuccessful transcendentalist. So, okay, the mind is very difficult to control. So Krishna has said, okay, for one whose mind is unbridled, asamyatatmana yogo dushprap iti me mati. So he says, for one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But for one who endeavors by practical means, success is guaranteed. And after all that, that few series of verses, 37 onwards, Arjuna's query now goes to, beyond just the troubles of the mind. So what happens if I don't succeed? And then Krishna is very mercifully explaining how even if you fail, you will get birth in a transcendental family or in an aristocratic family, and there is no loss on this path. And then to conclude this chapter, after giving all these faith-giving, confidence-building measures which Krishna has very mercifully done, right at the end, Krishna gives the punch verse, which is 6.47. So there are 47 verses in this chapter. So in 6.47, Krishna says, Yoginam api sarvesham madgate nantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo mataha. So Krishna is saying very clearly that of all the yogis, the one who with great faith always abides in me, thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and he is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So this is like, giving a glimpse, just like we have a trailer, to a movie, upcoming movie. So Krishna Now the upcoming 7th to the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is the essence. That is the Bhakti Yoga. That is where Krishna is going to give the essence of his message. So in the first 6 chapters, Krishna spoke about Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness, Dhyana Yoga, and he's building up the tempo. And 6.47, Krishna gives the, you can say what is going to come in the future, Krishna encapsulates in one verse, Yoginamapi Sarvesham. So anyway, so this was like a broad overview of this chapter. Now let's come back and see where we are in the context of this overview. So before this verse 6.29, if you go back a few verses, it will be useful to have a look at these few verses. So just to see things in context. So 6.24, Prabhu, if you can go to 6.24, it's a very interesting verse because here Krishna is talking about determination and not being deviated from the path. 2 qualities. Sa nischayena yuktavyo yogo nirvinna chetasa sankalpa prabhavan kamams tyaktva sarvan asheshataha. So manasai vendriya gramam viniyamya samantataha. So here Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna how one can actually be determined and not be deviated on the path of yoga. So one should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon without all material desires born of mental speculation and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. So Krishna is giving us, a kind of, you can say, he has given us a whole plan over here, what to do, what not to do, right? So we have to be very determined, and what we should not do, not be deviated from the path. And to do all these things, what should be done? You should abandon all material desires, and without any exception, right? So now if you look at this word, Sankalpa Prabhavan Kama, it's a very interesting word actually. Very interesting phrase here. Sankalpa means what? The word Sankalpa in Sanskrit means resolution, right? So resolution. We take a New Year resolution, or we take a resolution to follow something in our life. But here, when Krishna is talking about Sankalpa, it is also meaning resolution, but in the context of Kama. Sankalpa Prabhavan's Kama, meaning the resolution which is born out of lusty desire. So the resolution which is born out of lusty desire to fulfill that desire is known as the Sankalpa here. So of course there can be Sankalpa to do something positive, to engage in devotional service, for example. But this Sankalpa Krishna is talking about the Sankalpa of the Kama. So interesting that Krishna is not saying that, so Krishna is saying Sankalpa Prabhavan Kaman Tyaktva. So you have to give up what? Not the Kama itself, but the Sankalpa Prabhavan Kama. The determination to fulfill the lusty desire has to be Tyaktva, given up, and Sarvan Asheshataha. So you see, it's a double emphasis. Sarvan meaning all, everything, without exception. And Asheshata means, again, Shesha means in a small part. Ashesha means not even leaving a small part. So it's like giving a double emphasis, right? Already I've said Sarvan, give up everything, but Krishna is making it sure by saying that give up everything and don't leave anything. So what you have to give up? So it's interesting that Krishna is not saying only give up lust. Krishna is saying give up the sankalpa or the resolution to fulfill that lusty desire. So why is Krishna saying this? It's because to actually get rid of lust, which is one of the anarthas, the 6 anarthas, it is not easy. It is not an overnight task. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take probably lifetimes together. But at least the yogi can begin by not acting on those desires. The desires will be there. Desires are there for the yogi also. The desires are for the materialist also. But as in the earlier chapter, Krishna said, Apurvamanam achala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamaya pravishanti sarve shashanti matmoti na kama kami. So the desires may flow in like the rivers flowing into the ocean, but who is the one who attains peace is not the one who acts on the desires, but the one who abstains from the desires by engaging in a higher by getting that higher taste, by engaging in devotional service. So in our life also, we have to be careful that we don't act on the desires which come into our minds. So we all have a history of, long history of engaging in all kinds of sinful activities in this sojourn in this material world, and nobody can even say how long it has been. So quite naturally, our mind will, have, or rather come up with, from the subconsciousness, all these thoughts will come up. But the difference between the yogi or the sadhaka who started practicing on this path and the person who has, who is who is a materialist, the difference is that the sadhaka does not act on those desires, the materialist acts on the desires. That is the difference. It's not that the desires don't come at all for the person who has started practicing Krishna consciousness. No, the desires come, but he resists them. So the example is given, like I think Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives this example, and Prabhupada quotes this, that just like we take a resolution that we won't eat grains on Ekadashi, and we stick to it. It's not that we take a resolution and then we think, okay, today it's too hard to fast from grains, I'm feeling too hungry, and I have to go to work and I have to do so many things, so let me just eat grains. No. Once you decide, you make a resolution, it's a resolution. So in the same way, when we decide that I am on this path of bhakti yoga, sadhana, marga, then we cannot, then the resolution has to be strong. Vyavasayatmika buddhi. And we cannot allow even a single crack to come in. So the example is given like, if you have a dam, a huge dam, and if you have a small crack in the dam, so the dam is holding back billions of tons of water, but that one small crack can allow maybe a few, even a grams of water to leak through, and that will make the crack bigger and the dam weaker, and slowly the crack becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, the dam becomes weaker and weaker and weaker, till the day there will be more cracks, and finally the dam itself could burst. And it's not could burst, it will burst, because it's seen in so many places. Like I believe it was in China in 1975. So there was this huge dam on the Yangtze River which got burst, and it was so deadly that instantly, like thousands, literally like 75,000 people were killed or something. So because when the dam bursts, then you don't have any control. So similarly, when the yogi is not careful with his thoughts or his contemplation, then as the Bhagavatam also explains in one of the later verses, I think it comes in the Rahuguna section, where it is said that if the mind is allowed to associate with its paramours, then the mind will doubtlessly kill the yogi. Doubtlessly kill the yogi. So, but that doesn't happen instantly. It may happen instantly, but generally it's over a gradual, it's over a period of time. So that is why Lord Krishna talks about this in the second chapter as well. Dhyayato vishayan pumsan sangas tesho pajayate. Krishna is not telling drishyato vishayan pumsan. Drishyato meaning visible. Dhyayato vishayan pumsan is the emphasis of Krishna, which means even if we are exposed to temptations, which we are in today's modern times, everywhere we look, left, right, turn, we are faced with temptations. But the real fall down begins when we contemplate on it. So that's why Krishna is emphasizing on dhyayato and not drishyato. Drishyato may happen, but more than that, the real fall down begins from dhyayato. And then, Krishna explains how, then the memory loss, and then bewilderment, and finally buddhi nasho, intelligence is lost, and then pranashyati. So therefore, this point which Krishna is mentioning here, sankalpa prabhavan kaman, has to be understood in this context. So there could be two types of temptations. One is temptations triggered from outside to inside. Like the senses are exposed to temptations, and the senses get agitated, and as a result the mind is triggered to act on that. That is one way. Another way is because of our past lifetimes of sinful activity, even without being exposed to the sensual objects, the mind or the subconscious desires could just awaken in a yogi, and it could just force the senses to act. So either way, the mind is impelled by the senses, or the senses are impelled by the mind, but in both ways one could one could actually start this process of fall down by dhyato vishyan pumsan, by